Hi, everybody. Christy Giannoni back with what I believe to be our last multimedia discussion, at least content-wise. So this is week 6. We're doing a comp review of some of the concepts that we didn't cover as far as the theorists in Dr. Sundstrom's lecture. So first up, I was kind of broke them down between GPA first and then PSML. So one of the guiding things that I was taking a look at is kind of this overarching theory of politics and decision-making. So talking not only about the dichotomy, Woodrow Wilson, but how these other concepts that we learned in our various courses tie into that as well. So ethics is a big one that I thought of, including positive rights and what people are really entitled to as far as getting help if they are unable to get it for themselves. That affects a lot of policy decision making, which would also tie into public policy and some other classes that we took. But kind of this idea of, as public administrators, what is driving us to make these right decisions? Because we are driven by taxpayers, by people. That is our duty as a public servant. So this ties in from MPA 580, legal and ethical issues, along with public policy. But two of the areas you can kind of look for is our ethics primer book, as well as the crash course videos. I think they did a really good job of covering some of the ethical theories that I'm tying into GPA when I'm thinking about it conceptually. I think virtue theory with Aristotle ties in as well, kind of what drives us. That I think the golden mean really sticks out to me, because as government employees, we really do try to fit within that, because we can't really go above and beyond in excess, because sometimes that'll affect monetary resources, etc. But if we do too little, then we're doing a disservice to the community. Additional GPA is funding, tax implications, as well as market efficiencies. These are concepts that we learned in finance and budgeting, as well as political economy. I think when we're talking about, say, along the lines of Graham Allison, those differences, funding is something that you can talk about, because there's going to be unfunded mandates that government agencies have to do that maybe the private sector is not experiencing. Also, just kind of how we get grant funding, the way that we get money is a lot of times we can't get gifts and gratuities or certain policies. So how that red tape can affect funding, and taxes in general, just scary to talk about, and trying to get, as a city or a county, you're governing your constituents to approve any kind of increase in tax is always challenging. It's a lot of local agencies saw that with Measure E. So kind of how we're getting our funding, how it's separating. The federalism ties into that, but I think the tax implications. And then market efficiencies and market failures. This is something that we learned in our political economy class. I think this Stiglitz and Rosengard book is pretty good about explaining some of these concepts, but this talks about what the obligation of the government is as far as stepping in when we do have those market failures. I think that's a relevant topic today as we talk about the economy, as there's, talks surrounding inflation and the recession in the housing market, some of these other things that we were able to learn as far as where the government can step in, when the government should step in, and what capabilities they have. Moving on to PSML, human resources, obviously near and dear to my heart. I think for a variety of the concepts, hiring and staffing is going to be a really big one. That's something that we talked about in depth in our public personnel management class. I think the Bowman, West, and Van Wert does a good job of explaining things kind of like the compensation, employee-friendly policies, training and development, kind of the core things that as we were talking this week, or not this week, but in the last coming weeks in the review of the Murray Parker Follett's and some of these more leaderships of how we get it, there's a concept of it, but then some of the GPA things can tie into it, and the PSML, it all wraps together for me in the human resources, because there are guidelines on how we can hire, Pendleton Act, civil service rules, these laws that we have. And so that can impact, if you have these grandiose ideas as far as the leadership side, what you can do to actually get the right people in there. So I think human resources, personnel management, the hiring, staffing concept is really important to consider and to review. Also, leadership styles. This is something that we went into heavily in MPA 520 for our leadership and management course. I think that book also did a good job, Montgomery Van Wert, which I forgot to list there. I was curious when I was looking at them, I didn't realize that Van Wert was a part of both of these books. So leadership and the human resources really tying in together here. Transformational theory is one that I was really focusing on when I was thinking about PSML. I liked how we had to do our critical assignment for that leadership, that 520 class of kind of what leadership styles would emerge in different scenarios. So for the paper, if we're going to have a concept that's going to be done within a certain time frame, so a 12-month, the one that I was working on now is kind of a fiscal year 12-month period. Leadership styles are going to evolve. If there's a time crunch, you might be a little more autocratic. You might be directing things. Then once it's implemented, be able to have some of those softer skills, that charismatic leadership, to make sure that people are following what was put into place. So I think transformational theory kind of does this overarching concept of grabbing all of those different ideas and concepts, but focusing on how those leadership styles will emerge as a change would be implemented along the lines of PSML. All right, friends, I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations, any additional thoughts and comments, and continuing to study as we near the finish line.